Lee Harvey Oswald was a former U.S. Marine who was accused of killing President John F. Kennedy. While in police custody, Oswald was murdered by Jack Ruby. Thousands of declassified files on the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy were released on March 18 following an executive order from President Donald Trump. The majority of records relating to the murder were already available to the public, but the more than 63,000 newly released pages come after decades of speculation about Kennedy's murder. The unredacted records detail the CIA's surveillance of Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City, where Kennedy's assassin Lee Harvey Oswald visited just months before the murder. One memo confirms that the CIA surveilled an American man living in Mexico described as a communist, but Oswald isn't mentioned by name. Oswald, who expressed communist views, defected to the Soviet Union in 1959 before returning to the United States in 1962. The following year, he unsuccessfully tried to obtain passage to Cuba and the Soviet Union. Another newly declassified document confirms this, revealing that Oswald visited the Soviet embassy in Mexico City to obtain a visa. Who was Lee Harvey Oswald? Lee Harvey Oswald is the presumed assassin of President John F. Kennedy. Before becoming one of the most infamous figures in history, Oswald served in the U.S. Marines in the 1950s. He defected to the Soviet Union for a period of time, but returned to America with his family. Less than a year later, on November 22, 1963, Oswald is believed to have fatally shot JFK. While being taken to county jail 2 days later, Oswald was killed by Jack Ruby. He was 24. Early life. Lee Harvey Oswald was born on October 18, 1939, in New Orleans to Marguerite and Robert Oswald Sr., who died of a heart attack 2 months prior to Oswald's birth. Following her husband's death, Marguerite sent Lee and his 2 older brothers to live in an orphanage. Marguerite remarried and eventually moved with her children to the Bronx in New York City. With his mother working long shifts, the young Oswald was often left to fend for himself. He spent time at the library while developing a habit of playing hooky from his 8th grade classes. He was eventually picked up and placed in a detention hall, where his social worker described him as emotionally detached, giving off the feeling of a kid nobody gave a darn about. Oswald and his mother eventually moved back to New Orleans, where he continued to develop his interest in socialist literature, which he'd begun to read in New York. Marine service. In 1956, a teenaged Oswald joined the U.S. Marines. He was a better-than-average marksman, yet was court-martialed twice in 1958 for having an illegal weapon and displaying violent behavior. Oswald ended his military service the following year. Soviet Union defection and return. The former Marine quickly arranged a trip to Moscow, where he informed Russian authorities that he wanted to move to the Soviet Union. After some debate by government operatives over Oswald's possible role as a spy, he was allowed to stay in the city of Minsk, where he was monitored closely by the KGB. Oswald wed Marina Prusakova, today known as Marina Oswald Porter, in April 1961. Dissatisfied with the quality of life in the Soviet Union, Oswald returned to the United States in June 1962, bringing his wife and their newborn daughter, June, with him. The family set up residence in Dallas, with Oswald taking on the post office alias of Alec J. Heidel. Around this time, Oswald's interest in communism transformed into support for Cuba. In early 1963, he ordered a .38 handgun via the mail and later acquired a rifle. He had Marina take a picture of him with the weapons, a document that would later be used as criminal evidence, as Oswald's rifle was eventually identified as the firearm used to murder President John F. Kennedy. In April 1963, Oswald allegedly tried to shoot right-wing ex-General Edwin A. Walker through the window of his home, but missed. After returning to New Orleans by himself for a short stint, in September 1963, Oswald took a trip to Mexico City, where he attempted to obtain passage to Cuba and the Soviet Union to no avail. Oswald then returned to the States, where he got a job working at the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas. His family stayed with a friend in a nearby suburb, and Marina gave birth to a second daughter, Rachel, that October. Assassination of JFK. On the afternoon of November 22, 1963, around the time of President John F. Kennedy's approaching motorcade through Dallas, Oswald was seen on the 6th floor of his work building, holding a rifle. At 12:30 p.m., 3 shots were fired, with the second and third hitting JFK. Texas Governor John B. Connolly was also hit and wounded. The president died at Parkland Memorial Hospital shortly after the attack at age 46. Oswald was spotted leaving the scene of the shooting and was later confronted some distance away by police officer J.D. Tippit, who Oswald then allegedly shot and killed. Oswald was later found and apprehended by the police at the Texas Theater, located the Dallas suburb of Oak Cliff. Over the next 2 days, he was arraigned, interrogated, and placed in lineups.